They denied food to the billionaire's 6-year-old son just for using crutches, until a 7-year-old homeless girl fed him and moved everyone to tears. Before we tell this tale, hit like and tell us where you're from and one value that guides your life. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over Central Park as 6-year-old Timothy Matthews struggled with his small crutches, tears streaming down his dirt-stained cheeks. His designer clothes were wrinkled and torn from his desperate crawling attempts to find help. The metal braces on his legs gleamed mockingly in the sunlight, a constant reminder of the car accident that had stolen his ability to walk normally just 8 months ago. "Please, I'm so hungry," Timothy whispered to a woman pushing a stroller past the bench where he'd collapsed. She glanced at his crutches with visible discomfort and quickened her pace, pulling her phone to her ear as an excuse to ignore him completely. Timothy's stomach cramped violently, a gnawing pain that made him double over, despite his already precarious position on the bench. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, when his nanny, Mrs. Henderson, had given him breakfast before his father left for another business trip to Tokyo. But something terrible had happened after that. Fragments of memory flashed through his mind like broken glass, shouting voices, Mrs. Henderson crying and gasping for air, men in suits talking in hushed, urgent tones about hospitals and emergencies. Then somehow, inexplicably, he was here alone, with no memory of how he'd gotten to this bench or why no one was looking for him. "Mom?" he called out weakly to passing strangers, his voice hoarse from crying. "Dad? Please, someone help me." But Robert Matthews, CEO of Matthews Industries and worth $12 billion, was somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, completely unaware his son was lost and starving in the heart of Manhattan. A jogger approached in expensive running gear, and Timothy's heart leaped with desperate hope. "Sir, please, I can't find my family. I'm so hungry and my legs hurt really bad. Can you help me call my daddy?" The man slowed, looking uncomfortable as he took in Timothy's appearance. "Where are your parents, kid? What are you doing here all alone?" "I don't know," Timothy sobbed, his small body shaking. "I think something really bad happened to Mrs. Henderson. She takes care of me when Daddy's working. She was on the floor and couldn't breathe, and then there were ambulance people, and I got so scared I ran. I tried to find home, but everything looks the same, and I can't remember which way to go." The jogger's expression shifted to suspicion as he noticed Timothy's expensive Cartier watch and pristine designer sneakers, despite his disheveled state. "Look, kid, I don't know what kind of elaborate scam this is, but you need to find your real parents. Nice try with the rich boy act." He jogged away, leaving Timothy more devastated than before. As the day wore on, Timothy approached vendor after vendor with increasing desperation. His crutches made walking agonizing, and his weakened state from hunger made every step feel like climbing a mountain. Each rejection cut deeper than the last. "This has to be some kind of joke," muttered a hot dog vendor when Timothy begged for food, pointing at his expensive clothes. "Rich kid like you trying to con me. Where's your nanny? Your driver? Stop wasting my time with this act." Timothy collapsed back onto the bench as darkness fell, his small body shivering despite the warm September evening. In the distance, he could hear the sounds of families enjoying dinner together at outdoor cafes, their laughter a cruel reminder of everything he'd lost. He closed his eyes, wondering if anyone would ever believe him, or if he'd simply disappear like the other forgotten people he'd seen sleeping in the park. The last thing he remembered before exhaustion took him was whispering a prayer his mother had taught him before she died. "Please, God, send me an angel. Send." 7-year-old Maya Rodriguez had been living on the streets for exactly 23 days since her mother died in the charity hospital, unable to afford treatment for the cancer that slowly consumed her. The foster system had been overwhelmed and slow to process her case, and Maya had slipped through the bureaucratic cracks, surviving on her street-smart wits and the occasional kindness of strangers who saw past her ragged appearance. She carried everything she owned in a tattered backpack her mother had sewn for her. A faded photo of her mother smiling on a rare good day, a worn, stuffed rabbit named Pedro that had been her companion since infancy, and today's precious treasure, a dented can of chicken noodle soup she'd found behind Romano's restaurant, barely past its expiration date. Maya had learned to read dates on discarded food better than most adults read stock reports, a survival skill that had kept her from getting seriously sick. As she made her way through Central Park to her sleeping spot under the Bow Bridge, she noticed the small boy curled up on the bench near the Alice in Wonderland statue. Something about his complete stillness worried her deeply. Maya had seen that kind of exhaustion before in the homeless shelter where she'd stayed briefly after her mother's death. The bone-deep tiredness that came from hunger, hopelessness, and the crushing weight of being utterly alone in the world. "Hey there," she whispered gently, approaching with the caution she'd learned on the streets. Timothy's eyes fluttered open slowly, focusing with difficulty on the girl with tangled brown hair and clothes that had seen far better days. Despite her rough appearance, her dark eyes held a warmth and understanding that Timothy hadn't seen from a single person all day. "Are you okay, little guy?" Maya asked softly, sitting carefully beside him on the bench. She noticed his crutches immediately, but didn't stare like the others had. Her mother had taught her that everyone carried invisible burdens, and some people's were just more visible than others. Timothy tried to speak, but only a dry croak came out. His lips were severely chapped, his face pale as paper, and his hands trembled with weakness. "I'm lost," he finally managed to whisper, "and really, really hungry. I think I might be dying." Maya studied him carefully with the keen eye she'd developed for reading people's true intentions. His clothes were definitely expensive, probably more than her mother had earned in 6 months of cleaning houses, but his suffering was absolutely genuine. She'd learned to spot fake beggars and con artists quickly during her time on the streets. They usually avoided direct eye contact and had cleaner fingernails than hers. This boy's desperation and confusion were heartbreakingly real. "What's your name, sweetie?" she asked, unconsciously using the same gentle tone her mother had used with scared children at the community clinic where she'd volunteered. "Timothy. Timothy Matthews. I live in a really big house with my dad, but I can't remember where it is or how to get there. Mrs. Henderson takes care of me because my real mum died. But something awful happened to her today, and now I can't find anyone who will help me." Maya's heart clenched painfully. She recognized the overwhelming confusion and terror in his voice. She'd felt that exact same lost feeling when the hospital social worker had told her there was no one left to take care of her. "I'm Maya Rodriguez. How long have you been sitting here all by yourself?" "Since this morning, I think. Maybe yesterday." "Time feels all weird and blurry." Timothy's voice was getting progressively weaker. "Everyone keeps thinking I'm lying because of my nice clothes, but I promise I'm not lying. I really am lost, and I really am hungry, and I really don't know how to find my way home." Maya looked at her precious can of soup, her only food security for the next day, then back at Timothy's trembling hands and sunken eyes. She'd planned to make it last 2 meals, sharing half with Mrs. Patterson, the elderly homeless woman who sometimes protected her from the dangerous men who prowled the park after dark in search of vulnerable targets. But looking at Timothy's pale, drawn face and seeing the way his small body shook with weakness, Maya made a decision that would forever change the trajectory of both their lives. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Mija, when you have very little, sharing what you do have becomes the most powerful thing you can do." "I have some food," she said quietly, pulling the dented can from her backpack. It's not very much, and it's not fancy like you're probably used to, but it's something warm for your belly." Timothy's eyes widened with desperate, overwhelming gratitude, tears spilling down his cheeks. For the first time in her short, difficult life, Maya truly understood what her mother had meant when she'd said that sharing your last bit of food with someone hungrier than you was the closest thing to magic that existed in this world. Maya pulled out a plastic spoon she'd been carrying in her backpack and worked carefully to open the dented soup can with a rusty can opener she'd found weeks ago outside a homeless shelter. The label was partially torn and faded, but she could still make out chicken noodle in barely readable letters. It wasn't much by most people's standards, but it represented everything she had in the world. "Here, you go first," she said gently, offering Timothy the spoon with a smile that somehow made her whole face light up despite their dire circumstances. "It's cold because I don't have any way to heat it up, but it's still good. My mama used to say that cold soup was better than no soup, and food shared with a friend was better than a feast eaten alone." Timothy's hands shook violently as he accepted the spoon, his eyes filling with tears of relief and overwhelming gratitude. "You're really giving me your food, your only food. You need it way more than me right now," Maya said simply, though her own stomach was growling loudly enough for Timothy to hear. She'd eaten half a stale bagel she'd found that morning and 3 crackers someone had dropped near the playground, but nothing substantial since the day before. Timothy took a small, careful sip of the cold soup, and the relief that washed over his face was immediate and profound. The soup was cold and had a slightly metallic taste from the dented can, but to him it was absolutely the most delicious and life-saving thing he'd ever tasted in his 6 years of life. "Thank you so much," he whispered reverently. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "We should share it," Maya said practically, settling closer to him on the bench so they could pass the can back and forth more easily. "I know exactly what it's like to be hungry and scared and feel like the whole world has forgotten you exist." As they took turns spooning the precious soup, Maya told Timothy about her mother, how Maria Rodriguez had worked 3 cleaning jobs to support them, how she'd gotten sick and couldn't afford the medicine she needed, and how she'd died in Maya's arms in the charity hospital just 23 days ago. Timothy listened with growing amazement and respect. This girl had absolutely nothing in the world, yet she was sharing her only meal with a complete stranger. "Your daddy is really truly rich?" Maya asked, not accusingly or with envy, just with genuine curiosity about a world so different from her own. Timothy nodded solemnly. "He owns Matthews Industries. They make computer chips and stuff for phones and cars. We have a mansion with 17 rooms and 4 different cars and a swimming pool on the roof. But Daddy's always traveling for work, especially since Mommy died in the car crash. Mrs. Henderson has been more like my real mom than anyone else since the accident. She reads to me every night and helps me with my physical therapy exercises for my legs and makes me laugh when I'm sad about my mommy." "What exactly happened to your legs?" Maya asked gently, noticing how Timothy winced and shifted uncomfortably every few minutes. "Car accident 8 months ago. I was with my real mom. She died when our car got hit by a drunk driver." Timothy's voice became smaller and more fragile. "That's when Mrs. Henderson came to live with us and take care of me. Dad got even busier with work after Mom died. I think being home makes him too sad because everything reminds him of her." Maya reached out instinctively and took Timothy's small, cold hand in both of hers. At only 7 years old, she understood grief and loss better than most adults ever would. "I'm so sorry about your mama. Mine's gone forever too, so I know how much it hurts in your heart." They sat together in comfortable, understanding silence, sharing the soup as the park grew darker around them and the city lights began twinkling like earthbound stars. Maya pointed out safe places to sleep where the police wouldn't hassle them, which park benches stayed relatively warm at night, and which food vendors sometimes gave away day-old pastries and sandwiches to homeless kids who asked politely. Timothy listened with absolute fascination. This girl was only 1 year older than him, yet she possessed survival knowledge and street wisdom he'd never even imagined existed. She was like a tiny professor, teaching him about a completely different world that existed right alongside his privileged one. "Maya," Timothy said suddenly, grabbing her hand with surprising strength, "when my dad finds me, I'm going to make absolutely sure he helps you too. You saved my life tonight, and I'll never, ever forget what you did for me." Maya smiled, the first genuine, hopeful smile she'd managed since her mother's death. "Just promise me you won't forget about me when you're back in your big fancy house with 17 rooms, okay?" "Never in a million years," Timothy promised, with the absolute certainty that only children possess, and somehow, looking into his sincere eyes, Maya actually believed him. As the first rays of dawn broke over Central Park, Maya woke with a start to find Timothy burning with a dangerous fever. His small body shivered uncontrollably despite the warm September morning, and his breathing was shallow, labored, and concerning. The stress of being lost, the dehydration, hunger, and exposure to the elements had taken a serious toll on his already compromised immune system. "Timothy, sweetie, wake up," Maya whispered urgently, gently shaking his shoulder while trying not to panic. His eyes opened briefly, but they were glassy, unfocused, and didn't seem to recognize her at first. "I feel really, really sick," he mumbled weakly, his voice barely audible above the morning sounds of the city waking up. "Everything hurts so bad, and I can't stop shaking. Am I going to die like my mommy did?" Maya's heart raced with fear and determination. She'd witnessed sickness like this before during her brief stay at the homeless shelter. It could turn life-threatening very quickly without proper medical care, warm shelter, and adequate nutrition. She looked around desperately, knowing that neither of them had access to health care and that emergency rooms would ask too many questions that might separate them forever. "We absolutely have to find your family today," Maya said with fierce resolve, helping Timothy sit up carefully. "Can you remember anything else about where you live? Any street names? What your house looks like from the outside? Any neighbors you might recognize?" Timothy tried desperately to think through the fever-induced mental fog. "Upper East Side," he whispered hoarsely. "There's a really big black iron gate with gold decorations, and there's a bronze statue of a horse rearing up in the front garden. The house number has a 9 in it, I think, maybe a 7 too." It wasn't much concrete information, but it was significantly more than they'd had the day before. Maya made a decision that absolutely terrified her. She was going to leave the relative safety and familiarity of Central Park and venture into the wealthy neighborhood where she clearly didn't belong and would undoubtedly attract unwanted attention. "Do you think you can walk a little bit with your crutches if I help you?" she asked, shouldering her backpack and preparing for what felt like an impossible journey. Timothy nodded weakly and struggled to his feet with Maya's assistance, leaning heavily on both his crutches and her small but surprisingly strong frame. Maya supported him as they began their slow, difficult journey north through Manhattan toward the Upper East Side, stopping every few blocks so Timothy could rest and catch his breath. People stared openly at the odd pair, a clearly homeless girl helping a sick boy with crutches navigate through increasingly expensive neighborhoods. Some passers-by looked genuinely concerned, others appeared suspicious or judgmental, but frustratingly, no one stopped to offer assistance or ask if they needed help. "There!" Timothy said suddenly, pointing with a trembling finger down the tree-lined expanse of East 73rd Street. "I think that might be it, the big house with the black gate." Maya looked in the direction he was pointing and gasped audibly. The Matthews mansion was like something from a fairy tale or movie. 4 impressive stories of limestone and glass, with perfectly manicured gardens, topiary bushes shaped like animals, and that distinctive black iron gate Timothy had remembered. But the house looked completely empty and abandoned, with several days' worth of newspapers piled up at the gate and no cars visible in the circular cobblestone driveway. "Nobody's home," Maya said softly, her heart sinking as she watched Timothy's face crumble with disappointment and renewed fear. "They don't even know I'm missing," Timothy sobbed brokenly. "Dad's probably in Tokyo or London or somewhere making business deals, and Mrs. Henderson—" His voice trailed off as fragmented memories began flooding back with startling clarity. "Mrs. Henderson was crying and couldn't breathe," he said suddenly, his eyes widening with horror. "There were paramedics and men in dark suits talking about the hospital. Oh no, Maya, I think something really, really bad happened to her. What if she died like my mommy did?" Maya held Timothy close as he wept, her young mind racing desperately. If his beloved nanny was in the hospital fighting for her life, and his father was unreachable somewhere on the other side of the world, who would help them now? And more importantly, how much time did they have before Timothy's condition became critical? Detective Sarah Chen had been working missing persons cases for 15 years, but the Timothy Matthews case was unlike anything she'd encountered in her entire career. Timothy Matthews had been reported missing by his nanny, Mrs. Elizabeth Henderson, just minutes before she collapsed from a massive heart attack in the family's mansion. She'd managed to tell the paramedics that Timothy was missing and in danger before losing consciousness, but no one had been able to locate the boy or establish contact with his father, who was attending crucial business meetings in Tokyo. Mrs. Henderson remained in critical condition at Mount Sinai Hospital, fighting for her life on life support, and Robert Matthews was currently on a plane flying back to New York, still unaware of the full scope of the crisis waiting for him. Meanwhile, Timothy had been missing for 36 terrifying hours, and statistical data showed that every minute that passed decreased the chances of finding him alive and unharmed. Detective Chen stood in Timothy's bedroom in the Matthews mansion, studying the space with a detective's trained eye. The room contained a custom-made hospital bed, specialized physical therapy equipment, and dozens of framed photographs showing a happy, healthy boy before the tragic accident that had changed his life forever. The housekeeper, Maria Santos, wrung her hands nervously as she answered Chen's detailed questions. "Mr. Matthews, he works too much, especially since the accident," Maria explained in heavily accented English, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Mrs. Henderson, she was like Timothy's second mother after his real mama died. The boy, he loves her more than anything in the world. When she fell down clutching her chest, he got so scared and panicked." "Where exactly was Timothy when Mrs. Henderson collapsed?" Detective Chen asked, making detailed notes. "In the back garden, playing with his toy cars like always. Mrs. Henderson called his name for help, but then she couldn't speak anymore and just fell down. Timothy, he must have gotten terrified and ran away. He does that sometimes when he gets really upset or overwhelmed, tries to find small places to hide until he feels safe again." Detective Chen nodded, building a psychological timeline. A severely traumatized 6-year-old with significant mobility issues, witnessing his beloved caregiver's life-threatening collapse, would indeed be likely to panic and flee in terror. But where would a frightened child with limited mobility go in a massive city like New York? Does Timothy know the neighborhood well? Are there any places he might consider safe or comforting? "He absolutely loves Central Park," Maria said immediately. "Always begs Mrs. Henderson to take him there to feed the ducks and watch the street performers. Says the park makes him feel close to his mama because she used to take him there before she died." Detective Chen felt a genuine spark of hope for the first time since taking the case. Central Park was vast and filled with countless hiding places, but it was a concrete starting point with logical reasoning behind it. She immediately radioed for additional search units to canvass the park systematically, focusing specifically on areas where a frightened child might seek shelter. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away from the mansion, Maya was making the most important and terrifying decision of her young life. Timothy was getting visibly sicker by the hour, his fever climbing dangerously high, and she realized with growing panic that she couldn't help him alone anymore. She'd noticed the police cars stationed around the mansion and the news vans gathering, and her street-smart instincts told her someone was definitely looking for Timothy. "I have to get help for you," she told Timothy, who was now barely conscious on a park bench just outside his own neighborhood. "Your family is looking for you. There are police cars everywhere around your house, and people with cameras." "Please don't leave me alone," Timothy whispered desperately, grabbing weakly at her sleeve. "Everyone always leaves me. First Mommy died, then Mrs. Henderson got sick, then Daddy went away. Please don't disappear too." Maya's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. "I'm not abandoning you, I promise. I'm going to bring help back, okay? I swear on my mama's grave that I'll come back for you." She covered Timothy carefully with her own thin jacket and approached a police officer who was directing traffic around the growing media circus near the Matthews estate. Taking a deep breath and summoning every ounce of courage she possessed, she tugged gently on the officer's sleeve. "Excuse me, sir," Maya said quietly but clearly. "Are you looking for a little boy with crutches named Timothy?" Officer Michael Rodriguez looked down at the small homeless girl tugging persistently on his uniform sleeve. His first instinct was to dismiss her as another street kid looking for attention, or trying to insert herself into a high-profile case for personal gain. But something about her serious expression, the genuine urgency in her voice, and the way she looked directly into his eyes made him pause and reconsider. "What exactly do you know about Timothy Matthews?" he asked, kneeling down to her level and studying her face carefully for signs of deception. "He's really sick right now," Maya said, her words tumbling out in a rapid, desperate stream. "He has a high fever and he's confused and dizzy, and he can barely stand up even with his crutches. I've been taking care of him since yesterday, trying to keep him safe, but he needs real medical help from doctors. He needs to go to a hospital right now." Officer Rodriguez felt his pulse quicken with adrenaline. This could be the breakthrough they'd been desperately hoping for. "Where exactly is he right now?" Just 3 blocks from here on a bench near the park entrance. I gave him all my food and tried to help him find his way home, but he keeps getting sicker and sicker. Please, you have to help him before something terrible happens." The officer immediately radioed Detective Chen with the potentially crucial information, then gently took Maya's small, dirty hand in his. "Show me exactly where he is, sweetheart. And what's your name?" "Maya Rodriguez, and Timothy is really good. He's not a bad kid or anything. He didn't run away on purpose to cause trouble. He got scared when Mrs. Henderson got hurt and couldn't breathe, so he ran away and got lost." As they hurried through the expensive neighborhood toward the park bench where Maya had left Timothy, she explained everything in remarkable detail, finding him hungry and desperate, sharing her only can of soup, helping him remember his address, staying with him through the night, and watching helplessly as his condition deteriorated. Officer Rodriguez listened with growing amazement and respect for this 7-year-old's extraordinary compassion and courage. They found Timothy unconscious on the bench, Maya's thin jacket draped carefully over his small, still form. Officer Rodriguez immediately called for an ambulance while Maya knelt beside Timothy, gently stroking his fevered forehead and whispering soft reassurances. "You found help, didn't you?" Timothy whispered weakly when he briefly opened his glassy eyes and focused on Maya's concerned face. "Maya, you came back just like you promised you would." "Of course I came back," Maya said through her tears, holding his hot little hand. "I told you I would never abandon you. And look, we found the right people to help you. You're going to be okay now, I promise." Detective Chen arrived just as the paramedics were carefully loading Timothy into the back of the ambulance. His vital signs were weak, but stable, and the medical team assured everyone that with proper hospital care, IV fluids and monitoring, he would make a complete recovery. "This incredible little girl saved his life," Officer Rodriguez told Detective Chen, placing his hand protectively on Maya's thin shoulder. "She's been caring for him since he went missing, sharing her food with him, protecting him, helping him try to find his way home. Without her, we might have been looking at a very different outcome." Detective Chen looked at Maya with a mixture of professional admiration and deep personal concern. "Where are your parents, honey? Who takes care of you?" Maya's face fell, and she looked down at her worn sneakers. "My mama died from cancer last month. I don't have anybody else in the world. It's just me now." Lucky, as the ambulance pulled away with Timothy surrounded by medical professionals who could provide the care Maya couldn't, she watched through the back window, memorizing his face. She'd kept her sacred promise. She'd brought him help and safety. But now she was alone again, with nothing but her backpack, her stuffed rabbit Pedro, and the memory of the little boy who had called her his guardian angel. What Maya didn't know was that Timothy's fevered, urgent words to the paramedics, "Find Maya Rodriguez. She saved my life. Please don't let Maya disappear forever," were about to set in motion a series of events that would transform her life in ways she'd never dared to dream possible. Robert Matthews burst through the doors of Mount Sinai Hospital like a man possessed, his expensive suit wrinkled from the 14-hour flight from Tokyo. His steel-grey eyes, usually calm and calculating in boardrooms worth billions, now showed raw panic and desperation. He'd received the call about Timothy and Mrs. Henderson while boarding his private jet, and the flight home had been the longest of his life. "Where is my son?" he demanded at the reception desk, his voice hoarse from shouting orders to his assistants during the flight. "Timothy Matthews. He was brought in this morning." The nurse directed him to the pediatric wing, where he found Timothy sleeping peacefully in a hospital bed, finally safe and receiving proper medical care. IV fluids dripped steadily into his small arm, and his color was already returning to normal. Robert collapsed into the chair beside the bed, overwhelmed with relief and crushing guilt. "Daddy?" Timothy's eyes fluttered open, focusing on his father's haggard face. "You came back from Japan?" "I came as fast as I could, son," Robert said, taking Timothy's hand gently. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here when you needed me. I'm so sorry about everything." Timothy's face grew serious. "Daddy, there's a girl named Maya who saved my life. She gave me her only food and helped me when everyone else said I was lying. She's homeless and all alone, and I promised her you would help her too." Robert felt his heart clench. In his world of corporate mergers and billion-dollar deals, he'd forgotten what true generosity looked like. "Tell me about Maya, son." Timothy's eyes lit up despite his exhaustion. "She's 7 years old, and her mama died from cancer. She's been living on the streets, but she shared her soup with me even though she was hungry too. She could have just walked away, but she stayed with me all night to make sure I was safe. She's the bravest person I ever met." Doctor. Patricia Williams entered the room, having overheard the conversation. "Mr. Matthews, your son has been asking about Maya Rodriguez since he regained consciousness. According to the police report, this little girl quite literally saved Timothy's life. Without her care and intervention, we might have had a very different outcome." "Now, where is she now?" Robert asked, his business instincts already shifting into action mode. "That's the concerning part," Dr. Williams replied. "She's back on the streets. Child Services is overwhelmed, and she slipped away before they could process her case. Detective Chen is still looking for her." Robert stood up with renewed purpose. "Dr. Williams, I want the best private security team in the city looking for Maya Rodriguez. I want social workers, police officers, and private investigators all coordinating to find her. Money is no object." Timothy squeezed his father's hand weakly. "Promise me, Daddy. Promise me we'll find her and take care of her like she took care of me." Robert looked into his son's earnest eyes and felt something shift fundamentally in his chest. For months after the accident, he'd thrown himself into work to avoid the pain of loss. But now, seeing his son's compassion and courage, he realized what truly mattered. "I promised Timothy. We're going to find Maya, and we're going to make sure she never has to be alone or hungry again." 3 floors above them, Mrs. Henderson was slowly waking up from her medically induced coma, her first whispered words being, "Where's Timothy? Is my boy safe?" Meanwhile, across the city, Maya sat under the Bow Bridge in Central Park, clutching her stuffed rabbit and wondering if she'd ever see Timothy again. She didn't know that the most powerful man in New York was mobilizing every resource at his disposal to find her. Oh wait, Maya had been hiding in Central Park for 2 days since leaving Timothy at the hospital, moving constantly to avoid the police officers and social workers who seemed to be looking for her everywhere. She'd overheard enough conversations to know they wanted to help her, but years of instability had taught her to be wary of adults making promises they might not keep. She was sharing stale bread with the ducks near Bethesda Fountain when she noticed a well-dressed woman sitting on a nearby bench, watching her with kind eyes. Unlike the other adults who'd been searching for her, this woman wasn't wearing a uniform or carrying official-looking papers. "Maya," the woman called softly, "my name is Dr. Sarah Martinez. I'm a friend of Timothy Matthews." Maya tensed, ready to run, but something in the woman's voice made her pause. "Is Timothy okay? Is he getting better?" Dr. Martinez smiled warmly. "He's doing wonderfully, thanks to you, but he's been very worried about you. He asks about you every few hours, and he won't stop talking about how brave and kind you are." Despite her wariness, Maya felt her heart warm at the thought of Timothy thinking about her. "I just did what my mama would have wanted me to do. She always said we should help people who are hurting. Your mother sounds like she was a very special woman," Dr. Martinez said gently. "Timothy told me about her, and about how you've been taking care of yourself since she died. That takes incredible strength." Maya approached cautiously, still clutching her backpack. "Are you here to take me away somewhere? Because I don't want to go to a place where I can't see Timothy again." Dr. Martinez shook her head. "Actually, I'm here because Timothy and his father have a proposition for you. But first, they want to make sure you understand that whatever you decide, you'll be taken care of. No more sleeping outside, no more being hungry, no more being alone." Maya's eyes widened with cautious hope. "What kind of proposition?" "Timothy's father, Mr. Matthews, wants to meet you. He wants to thank you personally for saving his son's life. And Timothy has been asking if you'd like to come stay with them, at least temporarily, while we figure out the best permanent arrangement for you." Maya's heart raced. The idea of seeing Timothy again filled her with joy, but the thought of entering his wealthy world terrified her. "I don't know how to act around rich people. I don't have nice clothes or good manners." "Maya," Dr. Martinez said seriously, "you have something far more valuable than nice clothes or perfect manners. You have a good heart, courage, and loyalty. Those are the things that matter most to Timothy and his father." Maya was quiet for a long moment, thinking about her mother's advice to always be open to kindness when it was genuinely offered. "Can I see Timothy first, before I decide anything else?" Dr. Martinez smiled. "He's been hoping you'd say that. He's waiting for you right now." "Matem." As they walked toward the car that would take them to the hospital, Maya clutched her stuffed rabbit tightly. She was about to step into a world completely different from anything she'd known, but the thought of Timothy's smile gave her the courage to take the first step. "Dr. Martinez?" Maya asked as they reached the car. "Do you think Timothy's daddy will really like me, even though I'm just a homeless kid?" Dr. Martinez knelt down to Maya's level. "Honey, after what you did for Timothy, his father would move mountains for you. You're not just a homeless kid. You're the little girl who saved his son's life. That makes you family." The reunion between Timothy and Maya in the hospital room was nothing short of magical. The moment Maya walked through the door, Timothy's face lit up with pure joy, and despite his IV lines and medical equipment, he tried to sit up as tall as possible. "Maya, you came back!" Timothy exclaimed, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "I was so worried about you. I kept telling Daddy about how amazing you are." Maya approached the bed shyly, overwhelmed by the private room's luxury, but focused entirely on Timothy's happy face. "I was worried about you too. Are you really feeling better?" "So much better," Timothy assured her, patting the chair beside his bed. "The doctors say I can go home tomorrow, and Maya, I want you to meet my daddy." Robert Matthews had been standing quietly in the corner, observing the interaction with growing emotion. Now he stepped forward, and Maya was struck by how much Timothy looked like him, despite the obvious differences in their circumstances. "Maya," Robert said, kneeling down to her eye level, "I owe you a debt I can never repay. You saved my son's life when I wasn't here to protect him myself." Maya shifted uncomfortably, unused to such serious attention from adults. "I just did what felt right, sir. Timothy needed help." Robert's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "In my world, Maya, most people help others because they want something in return. But you helped Timothy when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That's the kind of person I want my son to learn from." Timothy reached for Maya's hand. "Daddy, can Maya come live with us? She doesn't have anywhere else to go, and she's my best friend in the whole world." Robert looked at Maya carefully. "That decision is entirely up to Maya. But I want you to know, Maya, that our home is your home for as long as you want it to be. No conditions, no expectations. You've already given us more than we could ever give you." Maya felt overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't name. "I don't want to be a burden. I don't know how to live in a fancy house or act like rich people." "Maya," Robert said firmly, "you wouldn't be a burden. You'd be a blessing. And as for acting like rich people, honestly, Timothy and I could learn a lot more from you about what's truly important in life." Dr. Martinez, who had been watching from the doorway, stepped forward. "Maya, I've spoken with the hospital social worker and with Mr. Matthews' lawyers. If you're comfortable with the arrangement, you could stay with the Matthews family as a foster placement while we work on making it permanent." Maya looked between Timothy's hopeful face and Robert's sincere expression. For the first time since her mother died, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to face the world alone. "Could I really live with Timothy?" she asked quietly. "We could be like brother and sister," Timothy said eagerly. "We could play together every day, and I could show you my room and the swimming pool and introduce you to Maria. She makes the best cookies in the world." Maya thought about her mother's words, about accepting kindness when it was genuine, and about how sometimes angels came in unexpected forms. Looking at Timothy and Robert, she realized that maybe she wasn't the only angel in this story. "Okay," she said softly. "I'd like that, very much." The smile that spread across Timothy's face could have powered the entire hospital, and Robert felt his heart heal in ways he hadn't thought possible since his wife's death. 1 month later, Maya was still adjusting to life in the Matthews mansion, but the changes in both children were remarkable. Timothy was stronger, happier, and more confident than he'd been since his mother's death. Maya, while still sometimes overwhelmed by her new circumstances, was thriving with proper nutrition, education, and the security of knowing she was wanted and loved. Mrs. Henderson had recovered from her heart attack and returned to work, though she now had help from additional staff. She'd taken to Maya immediately, recognizing in her the same fierce protective instincts she'd always admired. "Maya, sweetheart," Mrs. Henderson called from the kitchen, "Timothy's therapist is here for his session. Would you like to join them today?" Maya had become Timothy's biggest supporter during his physical therapy sessions, cheering him on and sometimes participating in the exercises herself. Their bond had grown even stronger as they helped each other heal from their respective traumas. In the therapy room, Dr. Jennifer Walsh watched in amazement as Maya encouraged Timothy through a particularly challenging walking exercise. "Come on, Timothy! You can do it! Remember, we're stronger together than we are apart." Timothy gritted his teeth, determination written across his face, and took 5 more steps than he'd ever managed before. "Did you see that, Maya? Did you see how far I walked?" "I saw everything," Maya cheered, hugging him carefully. "Your mama would be so proud of you." Dr. Walsh made notes about Timothy's remarkable progress. Since Maya's arrival, his motivation had increased dramatically, and his physical abilities had improved accordingly. More importantly, his emotional healing was evident in everything he did. Later that evening, Robert found the children in the library, working on homework together at the large oak table. Maya was helping Timothy with his math, while he helped her with reading comprehension. They'd become perfect study partners. "Dad," Timothy said, looking up from his worksheet, "I have something important to tell you." Robert set down his laptop and gave Timothy his full attention. "What is it, son?" "I want to start a foundation," Timothy said seriously. "A foundation that helps homeless kids like Maya was. We could make sure they have food and safe places to sleep and people who care about them." Maya's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? We could help other kids?" Robert felt his heart swell with pride. "That's a wonderful idea, Timothy. Tell me more about what you're thinking." Timothy's words came out in an excited rush. "We could have special houses where kids could stay safely, and good people like Mrs. Henderson to take care of them, and doctors to make sure they're healthy, and teachers to help them learn. And Maya could help design it because she knows what kids really need when they're scared and alone." Maya nodded enthusiastically. "And we could have stuffed animals for the little ones, and warm blankets, and soup that doesn't come from dented cans." Robert looked at these 2 remarkable children who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and together had created something beautiful. "I think the Timothy and Maya Foundation for Homeless Children sounds perfect." "When should we start?" "Tomorrow," both children said simultaneously, then burst into laughter. As Robert watched them plan their foundation with the pure determination that only children possess, he realized that Maya hadn't just saved Timothy's life that day in Central Park. She'd saved their entire family, teaching them that love shared multiplies rather than divides, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the smallest hands. But what none of them knew was that their foundation would soon face its first major test, when a crisis at a local children's shelter would require everything they'd learned about courage, compassion, and standing together against impossible odds. 6 months after Maya joined the Matthews family, their foundation was becoming a reality faster than anyone had imagined. Robert had assembled a team of the city's best child welfare experts, architects, and social workers to bring Timothy and Maya's vision to life. The first Timothy and Maya house was under construction, designed to provide temporary housing and support services for homeless children. But on a cold February morning, their commitment was put to the ultimate test. Detective Chen called Robert with urgent news. Rainbow Children's Shelter, one of the city's last remaining facilities for homeless youth, was being shut down due to financial difficulties and safety violations. 37 children, ranging from ages 5 to 17, would be on the streets within 48 hours. "Dad, we have to do something," Timothy said when Robert explained the situation at breakfast. His walking had improved dramatically with Maya's encouragement, and he now used only 1 crutch instead of 2. Maya, who had been quiet during the explanation, suddenly stood up with fierce determination. "These kids are going to be just like I was, scared, hungry, and alone. We can't let that happen." But our foundation house won't be ready for another 3 months, Robert said gently. The construction isn't finished and we don't have all the permits yet. Maya's eyes flashed with the same courage Robert had heard about from that day in Central Park. Then, we use this house. We have 17 rooms and most of them are empty. These kids need help right now, not in 3 months. Timothy nodded eagerly. Maya's right, Dad. We have everything these kids need. Food, beds, safety, and people who care. Isn't that what family means? Robert felt his throat tighten with emotion. His son and Maya were asking him to transform their private home into an emergency shelter, to open their doors to dozens of traumatized children they'd never met. It would be chaotic, expensive, and complicated beyond measure. It was also exactly the right thing to do. Mrs. Henderson, Robert called to the kitchen, how do you feel about having some extra children around the house for a while? Mrs. Henderson appeared with a knowing smile. I've been preparing extra bedrooms since yesterday, Mr. Matthews. I had a feeling you 3 would come to this conclusion. Within hours, the Matthews mansion was transformed. Robert's legal team worked frantically to obtain emergency foster care licenses. Medical professionals donated their time for health screenings. Local businesses delivered clothes, toys, and supplies. The children's arrival that evening was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Maya took charge naturally, drawing on her street experience to help the newcomers feel safe. She showed them where everything was, shared her own story to help them trust, and made sure the youngest ones had stuffed animals to hold. It's okay to be scared, Maya told 8-year-old Carlos, who hadn't spoken since arriving. I was scared too when I first came here, but Timothy and his daddy and Mrs. Henderson, they're good people. They won't hurt you. Timothy, despite his own physical limitations, became the perfect big brother, organizing games and making sure everyone felt included. His natural leadership skills, combined with Maya's street wisdom and compassion, created an environment where healing could begin. As Robert watched Maya teaching the children how to properly set the long dining table, and Timothy leading them in a silly song before dinner, he realized something profound. They weren't just helping these children. These children were helping them become the family they were meant to be. But late that night, as he tucked in 39 children instead of just 2, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that their biggest challenges were still ahead of them. 1 year later, the Timothy and Maya Foundation had grown beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The emergency response to the Rainbow Shelter crisis had attracted national attention, inspiring similar programs across the country. The Matthews mansion had returned to normal after the children moved into the completed Timothy and Maya house, but the experience had forever changed everyone involved. Maya, now 8 years old, stood confidently at the podium in the Foundation's community center, addressing a room full of potential donors, city officials, and child welfare advocates. Her transformation from a scared, homeless child to a poised young advocate was nothing short of miraculous. A year ago, I was living under a bridge in Central Park, Maya began, her clear voice carrying across the crowded room. I was hungry, scared, and thought nobody in the world cared if I lived or died. But then I met Timothy, who was lost and hungry just like I was. In the front row, Timothy beamed with pride. His walking had improved so much that he now used only a walking stick, and his confidence had grown along with his physical strength. I shared my soup with Timothy because my mama taught me that when you have very little, sharing what you do have is the most powerful thing you can do, Maya continued. I never imagined that 1 can of soup would change both of our lives forever. Robert, sitting with Mrs. Henderson and their board of directors, felt his eyes fill with tears as he watched Maya command the room with the same natural authority she'd shown with the shelter children. The Timothy and Maya Foundation has helped 847 children find safe homes in the past year, Maya announced. But more importantly, we've learned that every single child who feels lost and forgotten has the power to change the world if someone just gives them a chance. The applause was thunderous, but Maya wasn't finished. Timothy and I want to tell you about our newest project. We're opening Timothy and Maya houses in 5 more cities this year, and we're starting a program to train other kids who've been homeless to become peer counselors. Timothy joined Maya at the podium, walking steadily with his stick. Maya taught me that being different doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong in ways other people can't understand. Every child deserves to feel that strength. And every child deserves to know that they matter, Maya added, that their life has value, and that someone believes in them even when they can't believe in themselves. As the event concluded and people mingled over refreshments, Detective Chen approached Robert with a smile. A year ago, I was investigating a missing child case. I never imagined it would lead to all this. Robert watched Maya and Timothy surrounded by children from their various programs, all of them laughing and talking animatedly. You know, Detective, that day in Central Park when Maya saved Timothy's life, I think she saved mine too. She reminded me that the most important things in life can't be bought or sold. They can only be shared. Mrs. Henderson joined them, tears in her eyes. Those 2 children have taught us all what real wealth looks like. It's not money in the bank, it's love multiplied and shared with everyone who needs it. As the evening wound down, Maya and Timothy sat together in the garden behind the community center, watching the city lights twinkle like earthbound stars. Maya, Timothy said thoughtfully, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't shared your soup with me that day? Maya considered this seriously. I think we both would have survived somehow, but we never would have learned that the best way to heal your own heart is to help heal someone else's. Timothy nodded. And we never would have learned that family isn't just about being related. It's about choosing to love someone and never giving up on them. Maya smiled, the same radiant smile that had given Timothy hope on that dark night in Central Park. The best part is, we're just getting started. Think of all the kids we haven't helped yet, all the families we haven't brought together, all the love we haven't shared. As they sat together in comfortable silence, both children understood that their story wasn't really about being rescued at all. It was about discovering that sometimes, when you reach out to save someone else, you end up saving yourself. And sometimes, one small act of kindness shared between strangers can grow into a love that changes the world, one child at a time. Their foundation would go on to help thousands of children, but Maya and Timothy knew that every single success story started the same way theirs had, with one person choosing to share what they had with someone who needed it more.